I couldn't quite believe the result we achieved, bearing in mind that a year before we just dreamed about it. But to get so many Le Mans cars, 51 Le Mans cars, and for over 400 other cars, and 6,000 people came on a Sunday afternoon. Quite unbelievable.
And of course some of the people were very special people. I mean, there was an extraordinary mix of people who turned up, wasn't there?
Well, we managed to inveigle the Club de Pilote from Le Mans to come. And so we had a lot of legendary drivers, including, of course, Stirling, but we had Richard Atwood, Derek Bell, David Piper, and about 30 other really well-known famous drivers who drove when the race was slightly less safe. So we're very pleased to see them. We did a lot of interviews with them, which was great.
So are you sticking pretty much to the same formula for 2011?
Well, everyone knows that I have a complete fixation with Le Mans, and so whatever the sensible commercial people tell me to do, they've undertaken to always have a Le Mans element. So there will be, hopefully, 30 Le Mans cars here, and again, lots of drivers. You know, I think we've got the BRDC coming, we've got the Club de Pilote coming again, so you know, it's shaping up really well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Well, you mentioned sensible commercial people, so I'm going to let you sit down and now go to somebody. Thank you, Michael. We're going to talk, obviously, to David Helens as well as Sir Stirling Moss in a moment, but you mentioned in the same sentence a sensible commercial mind. I don't think that those two adjectives always go together, but it does bring us neatly to Eric Verdenroe. Eric, if you can grab the microphone, a very fast start, as we've said, in 2011. So how are you going to keep that up? How are you going to keep the acceleration curve rising for 2011?
Well, the great thing is that people now know about us. You know, when we started about this time last year, it was a new event, it was untried and so on. And everyone who came had such a good time that they've all been telling us throughout the year that, you know, from now on, this is going to be a landmark event for them. And so, you know, it's make it bigger, make it better, knocking off the rough edges. You know, there's no doubt that there were some things which we didn't do that brilliantly in the first year. There wasn't enough food. We need a bit more space for people to be able to walk and that sort of thing. And we need to, you know, just make sure that it's a really fantastic experience for the whole family. This is an event which should, you know, bring families as well as car enthusiasts and people from the local area.
And what about the theme for 2011? What is your theme?
Well, the overriding theme is the 60s, and we're therefore going to be celebrating the 60s in most of the things that we're doing. And you know, we'll be talking about some of those later, but there are some very important celebrations of 50 years this year, as you know, the E-Type and the Mini Cooper, and we'll have displays of both of those. And the Le Mans display will not be exclusively 60s, but will be majoring on the 1960s.
Apart from the E-Type and the Mini Cooper, what other special cars can we expect to see?
Well, there are going to be the patron cars, which you know, Stirling obviously was very involved with, and you know, they are wonderful cars from people like Tommy Sopwith, Colonel Ronnie Hoare, and John Coombs, and of course Rob Auger. And so we're going to have some really, really splendid examples of those as well.
What about the public? Because what's really special about Chelsea Auto Legends is it's not only the cars that we all look at and wish we could afford. If we've got something interesting enough, we can bring it ourselves.
Absolutely. The invitation is out there. You just go onto the website, you tell us what your car is, and over 250 cars will be accepted. And we already have over 100 of those lined up. And you know, people do come and see a wonderful selection of cars, all the way from a Volkswagen Combi van right the way up to the very latest supercar. And you know, people are amazed by the variety of cars that we managed to put together last year, and we hope to exceed that this year.
And a final word about a special run that I think is coming from the Royal Automobile Club in Pall Mall.
Yes, we've joined up with the Royal Automobile Club to run a run for supercars with piston heads and our latest media sponsor, the Sunday Times India section. And we're going to have 25 to 30 cars arriving at about midday, which will make a great occasion when they arrive through the south gates. We'll also have other runs arriving at various other times, and we've joined up with the Ace Cafe, and we'll be having a motorcycle run, which will also be arriving at about an hour earlier.
Plenty happening. Well, if I can ask you to pass your microphone along to Sir Stirling. We've mentioned that the Chelsea Auto Legends this year will be honouring the privateer, the great private entrance. Now, Stirling, you raced for surely the greatest private entrance of them all, Rob Walker. You had an extraordinary relationship with Rob, didn't you?
Well, Rob Walker had written, as I think some of you may know, in his passport, as what his business was being a gentleman. And I think it sums it up. I mean, a wonderful man. I mean, if ever I wanted to race anywhere, I'd say, Rob, you know, can we go to Argentina? And say, speak to Alf. If Alf's not okay, off you go.
Alf being the mechanic.
Alf being the mechanic, Alf Francis. And, I mean, the most wonderful man. I mean, he had all these sort of, we used to say, his water-cooled stopwatches, because when he pushed the button like this, one would start, another one would zero, and another one would do something else. And he was so much involved and such a wonderful man. I mean, I mean, for instance, you know, in 1935 or 6, when he raced at Le Mans, he was going around and it came, I think, 6 o'clock, and Rob came in. And he came in because gentlemen don't wear brown shoes after 6. And he had to change his shoes and put on his suede. You know, just before the end, they would come in signal. And he came in and said, well, what's that? They said, well, you've done such a good job, Rob, we're having some champagne and we didn't want you to miss it. And, you know, that's what racing was about. And so, I mean, we hope we get a little bit of that atmosphere here as well.
Well, you, of course, at the height of your career, you were the most wanted racing driver in the world. You could have had your pick of any of the works teams, and yet you drove for a single car privateer with a couple of mechanics. Why did you go for Rob when you could have raced for literally anyone?
Because Rob was a gentleman. I mean, he was such a lovely man to be with, and the whole, I mean, to go to a motor race, you know, I mean, with Rob was something I really enjoyed. You know, as against you go with a factory, it's terrific because you've got probably better cars and better organisation maybe, but Rob was something so special himself, and when you're racing as I was every week, to be able to do that made it extra special itself.
We're going to see shortly one of the great cars that we raced for Rob, in, of course, the Rob Walker colours of dark blue with the white noseband. But let's just mention where we are now. You've always lived in London. You've lived in London all your adult life. You've never wanted to go and save lots of tax by living in Monaco or Switzerland or anywhere else. So you're the man who opened this very event last year. What do you think of Chelsea Auto Legends happening right here in your hometown?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, the turnout of cars we had, the amount of people, the things there were to do and see, and the whole atmosphere, I think, was so great. It was, you know, it was just generally a day out for the family, and that's something so special in London. To be able to come here and right bang in the middle and see this, I mean, the site we're on here has to be worth millions, I mean billions. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, Buckingham Palace is about the only place bigger, I think. And coming here and being part of that is something very special.
Now, one of the themes, as we've heard, this year, it's the swinging 60s. You were very much part of the swinging 60s. Yes. do you remember the swinging 60s with affection, Sterling?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, that's spreading happiness as far as I was concerned. It was a wonderful time. I mean, when they brought out those mini skirts, I can't believe it. And now you look back, and it's something. I just hope it really comes in. I hope that we have a wonderful hot day and we'll see a lot of mini skirts here.
Well said, well said. Sir Stirling Moss, thank you very much. If I can ask you to pass the microphone to your left, because we'd now like to have a quick word with David Hellens. David, you only have to look out of the window to see the scale of the Chelsea Flower Show, for which, of course, this is the traditional home. I know that last year was all a bit different when Chelsea Legends arrived. So, are you pleased with how it turned out? I mean, you're looking at it from a slightly different viewpoint. You are the master here. It's your backyard. You have to make sure that it's put to good use in every way. So, looking back on the first year of Chelsea Auto Legends, how do you feel?
Well, we're the guardians of living history. So you can imagine when Michael Scott and Simon Dorks came along and said to me, I've got a great idea, we want lots of cars to rev up in your backyard on Sunday morning in Chelsea. Actually, I was very frightened, to be honest, about it. We've known the flower show for 98 years, and we're coming up to our sort of 100, and we think we've just about got to know them. So we don't rush into these things. The result last year was wonderful. You made the word a garden fete. We thought it was tremendous. The Chelsea pensioners loved it. Many of them have been in the reaming. So I would caution you about leaving these cars lying around. So you might whip an engine out and forget how to put it back in again. But it fits with what we're doing. And why are we doing it? Why do we want to hire out grounds like this? We do have to keep a roof over our head. And the Chelsea Flower Show client, Masterpiece Antiques Fair comes afterwards, and actually now Auto Legends. And I look forward to the next 100 years.
Keith Gapp of EFG Bank International is here. EFG, as I'm sure those of you who spend any time with historic motor cars know, are tremendous supporters of the classic car movement and historic racing generally. At places like Le Mans, Spa, Pau, Gstaad, even the London to Brighton run. Chelsea Auto Legends is pretty different from the other things that you get involved in. So why do you think you were here last year, you've now committed for another 4 years? What is it about Chelsea Auto Legends which is attractive to EFG?
I think because it's different. I mean, we do a lot of things, as you mentioned, in the car space. This is different. I mean, we like the diversity. I mean, our events, it's a long list, but they are actually subtly different in terms of what they stand for. And I think for the reasons that have been eloquently expressed by people on the panel. It's London. This is a fabulous setting. It's great cars, great people. All coming together. The Le Mans angle, which obviously we're well known in relation to Le Mans Classic, and the Le Mans aspect was certainly something that drew us in the first place. It was great to be involved at the very beginning. I mean, that's something that we love doing, getting in before it's established, when you still don't know to what extent it's going to be a success or not, and it's great that it was a fabulous success, and we're certainly very, very happy to be continuing our support.
Fantastic, thank you very much for that. Finally, Eric, I'm just going to come briefly back to you. We have talked about 2011, which is what this is really all about. But I think you have a kind of longer focus than that. Do you see, with David's help and with continuing success of Chelsea Auto Legends, this going on to be established in the long term?
We see this as something where we're working in partnership with a whole number of interested parties, and our sponsors are very much partners. We're a canvas that we can put things on. For instance, we're working with Autocar. They recently did the 5,000th road test, first time any motoring magazine in the world has ever hit that landmark or anywhere near it. And they voted for the 10 cars, most significant cars they tested during that era. And we'll have examples of all those cars there. Jamie Costafini is here from Autocar, and that includes obviously the Jaguar E-Type, which was their #1 car, and it was actually the car that's here today, Philip Porter's car, which was the car that was road tested. But the cars include the Daytona, the McLaren F1, and actually the 1961 Mini Cooper, Mini Minor. So a huge range of really interesting cars, and it's working with people, I think, to come up with creative ideas that we're finding. It's very easy to work with people because they want to be involved with us. So.
What we do is wrap up the formal proceedings now, but reward your attendance by showing you just a few of the very special cars that will be here in September. Let's start off with the iconic, now almost priceless, Ferrari short wheelbase GT Berlinetta, the actual car with which Stirling won the Tourist Trophy at Goodwood. I think you'll find it outside now. Thank you very much.